Welcome, everybody, to Danny After Dark. If you are new, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Today is a very special interview. We are joined by Kevin Sullivan, a writer of true crime and history. Kevin M. Sullivan is the author of 16 books. Some of his published works are Kentucky Bloodbath, 10 Bizarre Tales of Murder from the Bluegrass State, Vampire, The Richard Chase Murders, The Trail of Ted Bundy, digging up the untold stories, the Bundy secrets, hidden files on America's worst serial killer through an unlocked door, in the Walks murder, Ted Bundy's murderous mysteries, the many victims of America's most infamous serial killer, and lastly, but certainly not least, the Encyclopedia of the Ted Bundy Murders. So, welcome, author Kevin Sullivan, to Danny After Dark. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for having me. I know we'll have a great time talking about Ted Bundy. And I want to say I'm no longer writing about Bundy, but my last book on him was um, the Yearly Journal, and it was just a collection of very interesting things, new revelations about the case, stuff I've been able to figure out that's been proven. Um, so it's no longer theory about Bundy's hunting patterns when he first got to Utah in September of 1974. So it's really cool the things that have come out. I've been really writing and as well other things as well, but I've been writing about Bundy ever since my first book came out. The main biography of Bundy that I wrote, and the full treatment of his murders was the Bundy Murders: A Comprehensive History. But then in 2015, I wrote that book that you mentioned, The Trail of Ted Bundy. So it's
Yeah.
been a series of 7 books, over 1,600 pages written about the case and the killer. Each book has new testimonies in it that have never been published before, and new revelations that have come forward, or that we, as Catherine Ramsland said on, I think it was the last one I did on the journal. She said we're still able to chip away at his secrets, and that's true
Mhm.
because of the things, the people that have come forward that I believe to be valid victims, or almost victims, but they survived it, and so I was able to put some stuff together, and about his hunting pattern when
Yeah.
he first got to Utah. So anyway, um, I've done 2 books since then. One book since the Yearly Journal, which was 17. My 18th book is a book I'm really finishing up now. I should be able to be finished with the book in about a week, and
Oh,
it's been a uh, year and a half, 2-year journey on this. It's about the Holocaust and the Nazis in World War II, the main characters that were um, uh, responsible for building that machinery of death,
yeah.
and not just the 6 million Jewish people that they killed, but an additional 7 million um, Soviet people that they just outright murdered. Not counting all the millions of Russian soldiers they killed, but that they outright murdered. So really, it was almost like 2 Holocausts going on at one time, and we don't. That other one of the Soviet citizens was always kind of unknown and played down until about 10 years ago, and it's just not very well known. So I've written a book about both of these terrible things, which you can include, I guess, in the entire Holocaust, and
Mhm.
about the 3 men most responsible, the 2 architects of it, which were Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich, and then the facilitator was Adolf Eichmann, who kept the trains running, and
Yeah.
with a lot of Jewish people and Russians were shot to death by the what's known as the Einsatzgruppen. Einsatzgruppen. Anyway, that'll be. I should be done in a week. Then I guess I'll have to, of course, as always, go back. Just maybe make changes here or there, but
Mhm.
just get it ready for publication. So, Anyway, but it's my 18th book, so yeah. I mean, it's
Nice.
been a long journey. I've been writing books for about 30 years now, so yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great segue actually into my first question for you is so you've been writing for
Yes,
almost 30 years, 30 years now. How did you get into writing in the first place?
that's very interesting. I guess I guess I should say too that when I was 10 years old, I the first adult book I read, not adult as in XXX, but as but as a big person's book. I was 10 years old. My father had a pretty good library at home, and I picked a book off the shelf called "The World's Worst Murderers,"
Mm,
and by Charles Franklin, an English author, and it was published in '65, both in England and in America. And my father had a copy, and I picked it off the shelf and I read it. And I was fascinated by it.
mhm,
And my father, so I started reading true crime when I was young. My father was also a veteran of the Second World War,
okay.
and his brother, both his brother and uncle, were killed in combat in that war. So
Oh,
I grew up hearing a lot about World War II and things like that. So I became a big reader of that. But as a young man, I mean, at the age of 19, I became a Christian, and I ended up going into the ministry, and I was in the ministry for many years. I still am in the ministry in
okay.
a far more reduced role because I'm also a writer, and yeah. So, but I have my feet in both worlds still. But at the age of 40, because I found George Armstrong Custer very interesting, I wrote my first book was published in December of '95, and that was called Shattering the Myth: Signposts on Custer's Road to Disaster. And it was a personality study of George Armstrong Custer. Custer was a real famous general. He rose to the rank of brevet general, which means temporary, for the Civil War. And he was he just became very well known, and he had
Mhm.
something called Custer's luck. He was never shot down, and he just was. It's like it was like he was the Teflon soldier. Nothing ever happened. But during the Indian Wars, he and all his not all his men, but three companies of his seven companies in the Seventh Cavalry were uh, were killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn, and he had undergone some changes there, and he kind of was believing his own press about certain things, and people were warning him about going into the to facing that amount of Indians out on in the in Montana,
Mhm.
and he just kind of rejected all their advice, and it cost him his life and the life of three of his companies, and then the lives of other companies as they fought the Indians all for a couple of days. So, in any event, that was an interesting thing, and I wanted to write one book, and I had this thing in me, and I just went for it, and I wrote it, and it was published, and I um, I I felt like that was going to be it for the literary thing. I'd gotten it out of my system, but then I had all these desires, so I started writing true crime after that, and but my like I say, the thing that really put me on the map as a true crime writer
Mhm. Yeah.
was the publication of my book, The Bundy Murders: A Comprehensive History, which came out in 2009. Briefly, the story on that, I never had any intention of writing about Ted Bundy. He wasn't on my radar. I was writing about other things. I was gathering a lot of information on Kentucky cases, which were later published in other books. But
Yeah. I was going to
um,
ask how you got involved in researching and writing about Ted.
yeah, so it was really interesting. I never had any desire to write about Bundy. It just wasn't on my radar.
Mhm.
But I had a friend. His name was Jim Massey, and he's passed on now. But he was good friends. We had been friends for a number of years, and um, he said that he was good friends with a fellow named Jerry Thompson out of Utah, who was the lead detective in the Bundy case. Excuse me, for that state.
Mhm.
And I said, well, that's interesting. So we talked a little bit about Bundy. I hadn't really read anything about Bundy at all. I was aware. I was already a young minister when he was put to death, and in 1989, and yeah, because I had been ordained in '84, been to school before that, but uh, yeah, I followed a little bit of that on the thing, and then he was. I woke up one morning around 8 or 8:30, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I heard he'd been put to death. They finally got him after
Yeah.
all those appeals." But that's it. That's really all I knew about
Okay.
Bundy. But I got a call from Jim Massey one night, and he said, "Thompson's coming to Louisville with his wife. Would you like to have dinner with us?" I said, "Yes." Now I was aware that, from what Jim had told me, that Jerry Thompson had Ted Bundy's murder kit.
Yeah.
Uh, he had escaped from. He was in jail and prison in Utah, but he was transferred to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of Karen Campbell, and he escaped not once but twice in Colorado.
Yep.
And I mean, it was a joke how they let this guy go. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And but anyway, he escaped and got to Florida, and that's where his end was, where he killed two women at Chi Omega, seriously injured others,
Yep.
and then killed, or not killed, but seriously injured another woman a few blocks away on that very same night. Anyway, so the murder kit was in Utah in the crime evidence room. He was dead. So Jerry Thompson got permission to take that and use it for like teaching seminars and things like that.
Okay.
So, which was really interesting. Well, anyway, on the night he arrived, Jim called me up to tell me where we're going to be eating dinner. They had gotten a hotel room really not too far from my house or Jim's at the Breckenridge Inn, which was just torn down about 6 months ago. But so we ate at a restaurant near there. But before he got off the phone and to let me know what time to be there, he said he brought the bag. And I said, "What bag?" He said, "Ted Bundy's bag. I have it with me in my trunk." So it was
Wow.
really cool. I said, "Well, let me meet you a little bit earlier before the Thompsons get there." I went up there, I looked at this stuff, and so we had dinner. I met Jerry, great guy. His wife Jean, great lady. And we went over to the after dinner to talk, and I got to interview Jerry because I wasn't on staff, but I would contribute articles sometimes to a local new print newspaper that originated here in Louisville, but was also in Lexington, Kentucky, and about 4 or 5 other states. And so I interviewed Jim, and I wrote an article about seeing the murder kit, and then I interviewing Thompson and all that stuff. And so just it was so surreal seeing this murder kit, which contained it was a brown satchel. And if you've seen any pictures, I've released these on the internet, and a lot of times documentary people will ask me to if they can
Yeah.
publish it. But anyway, it's a couple color pictures, and there's two main ones of one where all the stuff is laying out, and then other where it's kind of bunched up on stuff, kind of making a little mountain of stuff, just a little bit. And so, but it's ski mask, uh, uh, two right-handed gloves. He was left-handed, but these were right-handed gloves, and they were different.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if he used the right-handed for dragging or what, or he got rid of the left-handed. I don't know, but they were there.
Yeah.
A woman's belt, probably from one of the murdered girls. Uh, Glad bags. Also, it had a bed sheet that Bundy had stripped down to make lengths for the binding of hands and feet.
Mhm.
That still had the FBI. They had sent that stuff off years ago to the FBI to have it forensically tested. This before uh, DNA was as good as it is today.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's 19. He put to death 1989. So really, there wasn't much going on with DNA. But they
Right.
tested it for different stuff. And so it had that. It had a electrical cord that was used for choking his victims, and it had a flashlight, just various items like that. So I brought all this. So I got to see all this stuff, and the Thompsons were here to visit Louisville and for a few days,
Hmm.
3 or 4 days. So I called Jim one night and I said, "Hey, you mind if he had turned the kid over to Jim? Jim took it down to his office, showed it right. So I called him one night during this period and I said, would you mind if I brought it to my house and took some pictures?" She said, "No." So I brought it to my house. My son-in-law was there. We spread it all out. We took pictures, and it was just so surreal having that murder kit in my house. So I wrote about this for Snitch, and I thought it would go away then, but it didn't go away. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book about Bundy. Well, Jim told me you shouldn't do that. Bundy's been done to death. Other people said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." I mean, there's it's old news. I said no, and this is where sometimes people, and I always say this to encourage others, do what you really feel you should do inside, no matter what the naysayers are doing or people telling
Yeah.
you no. You go with what you know on the inside. So I did. And I worked with all the main detectives. I gathered thousands and thousands of case files. And I noticed something interesting because I had to read everybody's book that was out there just to see what they covered and what they didn't cover. Perhaps didn't cover because it just wasn't available then. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But halfway through the book, I started finding out valid things that had never been published before about several of the murders and a whole lot of new information about the case in general. And it was all provable that can be backed up by the record, but not many people knew it. And some of the detectives, especially Mike Fisher out of Colorado, who's still alive. Since I wrote the book, we've had people pass away. Al Carlisle, the psychologist,
Yeah.
he was a friend. He was a friend of mine, and he told me a lot about his dealings with Bundy. Um, Bob Keppel, the main detective in Washington State, is gone.
Yep.
Just various people have passed away, but Mike Fisher's still here, and Mike opened up in some ways that he hadn't opened up before with people over the years, and told me some things that had not been in print before, and information about what happened to certain victims. And at one point, he said, "Would you mind not using the name of what I just told you about?" And I said,
Hmm.
"Well, my publisher's not going to want that if you wouldn't mind." He said, "Well, all right, go ahead." So there was just a lot of new stuff coming out about the case. And like I say, halfway through the book, I was very pleased with it. So, I get the book finished and I started, when it just, even though I met Thompson here, I had to go back to Utah. This was in 2005 when I first met Jerry when he came to Louisville.
Okay.
2006, I had to go back to Utah and do investigations there, and I had to interview. Didn't have to, but I wanted to interview Jerry because he's so knowledgeable. And not only did we interview in 2006, but anytime I needed some answers, I'd call him, just like I'd call Keppel
Mm.
or whomever, and Mike Fisher, and oh Lord, in fact, Mike typed out a bunch of his stuff and sent it to me by email, and
Oh,
I still
nice.
have that. And I published some of those transcripts in subsequent books.
Yep.
But the thing of it is that it's great because once I got finished with the book and I sent out like 6 query letters with some information about the book. I got an immediate response from McFarland. 2 weeks later, they wanted to sign me to a contract. I did. Then I had another uh, publisher contact me by phone and say, we want to sign you to this book. For, for, for this book, we want to publish it. And
Mhm.
I said, I would love to, but I've already signed with them. Not that I would trade them out for McFarland. I wouldn't.
Mhm.
But if they'd have called me first, I'd have gone with them. They did 6 responses.
Mhm.
Two of them were good and wanted to publish the book. That's really good. And so and I didn't even have an agent, but the acquisition editors saw what I wrote, saw how I proved everything I was writing
Mhm.
with the footnotes and everything, and they were very pleased about it. So that's the book that it took time to take off because nobody knew who I was. I think I only sold like 300 copies during the
Oh,
first
wow.
year. Yeah, but I mean, most books they say sell 250 to 400 copies, and that's kind of like all they sell. I mean, a lot of books don't do that, and so mine's been a bestseller for years now.
Yeah.
And in fact, in 2020, it was my publisher and I we did a second edition of it where
Yep.
I added even more new information to it. And so it's just great, and it made a couple of corrections of things I wanted to change, and so it's been really good. And also I noticed that documentarians started calling me after that was published, especially from England, and interviewing me. But um, in 2017, um, the a lot of U.S. documentary makers started getting my book, and
Okay.
then trying to get a hold of me. And so I went on a lot of shows. I've been on a lot of these Bundy docs over the years since then.
Mhm.
And what I found out is that they wanted the Bundy documentaries of today get it so much more uh, correct than they do than they did earlier. Because years ago, when documentary people went, they didn't always search out detectives in Utah. They didn't search out Mike Fisher. They didn't
Mhm.
search out a lot of stuff. They always went to Washington State as if those guys solved the case. And they didn't. He escaped. Even when Bundy confessed to the murders to Bob Keppel in Washington State, they could never charge him posthumously. So once they started reading my book, and believe me, it wasn't any fault of the guys in Washington State.
Right.
They worked very hard, but he just slipped through their fingers.
Right.
Uh, but once they saw that there was a big role in Utah and that he was brought to light in Utah, and that he when he escaped to Florida, yeah, I mean, and before he escaped to Florida, he'd also been killing, of course, in Colorado. And
Hmm.
when they saw all this new information that was coming out, I think my book was published. Well, 2009, it was published 20 years after he had been put to death, and there was starting to be a real interest in Bundy again,
Yeah.
and even in the last few years, there's been a big swirl of interest in him again. He's kind of like, and I think he'll remain this way, like just the way England views Jack the Ripper, and
Yeah.
that and and people in America study Jack the Ripper. He's never going away. Well, I
Okay.
don't think Bundy's going away either. The case, the individual, how all this happened, how it how he avoided detection for so long, how diabolical he was, but you couldn't tell that from the outside. There's so
Right.
much to Ted Bundy that he's not going away either. I think they'll be studying this case 100 years from now.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is they started these documentary makers, these documentarians start saying, well, basically they were wanting to do it right. I got a call from a guy uh, in Hollywood, and he said, I think that Reels is using your book for their show. I said, yes. I said, yes, they are. In fact, I'm on the show, and he had seen me on the show, but he said from the way they're following the story, they have to be using your book. I said they are. So a
Mm.
lot of them, the guy that did the Netflix doc, can't remember his name now, but the producer called me and he wanted me to come to New York in like a week. I couldn't do it. My schedule, I couldn't do it.
Mm.
And I said, but you might want to get my book. He said, I already got your book. So
Okay.
they're using it as a frame of reference for the entire story. So it's been really great,
Yeah.
and so the book really has done well. It's still a bestseller, and I'm just very grateful that that's the book that put me on the map. So In the years since then, and I know you want to talk about Bundy, and we'll get to his nature and what he did and all that stuff. But in the years since then, every time I published a new book about Bundy, I had never intention of going any further.
Mhm.
But I'd get so many testimonies from people that most of the people that contact me, they didn't have an encounter, or I can't prove that they did, or it doesn't sound like it's likely. But
Right.
then there are those that do contact me, that they lived where he did when he was there, that that they're saying certain things he said that Bundy would say, and that they lived in that area at that time, and it's way more valid. And I've used these testimonies, and there's some that are just 100%. There's testimonies in some of my books, 100% that these people encountered Bundy. And he really, I say in the journal, and I go into some statistics of what must be in Bundy encountering women that did not result in him obtaining a victim. For every victim he got, and I'm not talking about the hitchhiker he picked up and murdered or something like that, but
Mhm.
for every victim he was able to lay hold of, there were probably 10 or more that he approached that didn't go with him.
Wow.
And so, you're talking probably people in the hundreds,
Right.
300, 400 people at least, that he tried to sway to go with him, that he never could. So, and like I say, that if we're just going to use 10 for everyone, so um,
Mhm.
it's an astounding thing. But the bottom line is this: um, when I ever published a new book about him, it's because of all these testimonies that came in, and then I started also writing about other factors about the case. And for example, I would go in deeper maybe than I had before in a previous section. And like in the Trail of Ted Bundy, I published a good number of those files, or those things that Mike Fisher wrote to me, those emails,
Yeah.
lengthy. I included them in that book so people would get a good understanding of, and also I would publish a lot of I remember when I was writing the Bundy murders, all these transcripts. When you're writing something that's narrative nonfiction, you're telling a story.
Mhm.
And what you do is you take all the testimonies that you're getting live from people that are still alive. You're taking all the reports that they had coming to, that they had written down when they were with the various police departments, or with the, county attorney, or what have you.
Mhm.
And you would compile this into a narrative nonfiction. And that's what we all do. That's what every book is about.
Mhm.
But I still remember thinking, you know what? So when I was writing the Bundy murders, it would be nice if people could read some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I include a little bit of that in the Bundy murders, but not much. When Bundy was on the run, and I mean, when they were following him after he went back home to Washington State, and everybody kind of knew he was the one, but they had to prove it a
Mhm.
little bit, but not much. But then I would do more in those books, and then comment on it, and relay facts concerning it that maybe the average reader would not know. But it's
Mhm.
still a very interesting thing. So anyway, that's what happened. So now I'm basically considering myself finished with Ted Bundy, and 1,500 pages. I'm just kind of happy, and I'm off to writing other things. And I'm 69. I don't know how long I'll keep writing books, but I'm going to keep writing books for a while, and we'll see where it goes. But I won't be surprised if I don't revisit Bundy. But you know, good luck to anybody else that can dig up more real information. I look forward to that if that's possible.
I was going to say, you've done quite a bit of research on this, so I'm not sure anybody can kind of top that, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they might find some. I have a really good friend, uh, Mike McCann. He has come up with some interesting things of from what he's told me, but it's got to be published in his book. I can't really tell you, but these have to do with people that he tried to get going, tried to get into his car. Some testimonies,
Hmm.
and also there's one particular thing where somebody was attacked, and from what he told me, I'm convinced it's it was Ted. So those kind of things can seep out, and whenever you find that stuff, I mean, it's hard to make a book of it unless you have a lot of it.
Hmm.
But I remember when people were contacting me, I thought, is this really going to go into my files and never
Right.
be heard by anybody? And so that's why I started writing the companion volume. So he's got some interesting things that will come out if he ever finishes the book. And so it's interesting, and I think it's likely Bundy. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, in the depths of your research on the Bundy case, like as we talked about, you seem to acquire and learn so much. Was there something that you
Yes.
learned along the way that was surprising or shocking that you learned that
Yeah.
wasn't really well known?
Well, I said to Bob Keppel, I've been writing true crime for a while, and then when I got in, and I've only written about one case that woke me up in a cold sweat on a couple of occasions. That was a case I wrote about, um, was published, called "The Death of a Cheerleader." It was it, in conjunction with Greg Olson, the writer. He and I published some things together, and I added some of my Kentucky cases. Wild Blue Press has done some of my Kentucky cases in their books. But I remember that it was a death. It was a murder of a really sweet cheerleader, a brutal murder. You won't find anything more brutal than this. And at the time, I had a daughter about the same age, and it woke me up in a cold sweat. But when I got to Bundy, even though I felt like I was prepared for a lot of this stuff, I was. I mean, it didn't surprise me how he killed, but I said a couple one day. I said, it's hard to understand why Bundy would want to murder these women. I said a lot of them are really pretty. I can understand him, wanting to have sex with them, but
Hmm.
if it became his girlfriend or something. Some people think Bundy was a rapist. He may have raped, but he did rape, but he raped and murdered, or he
Right.
murdered and raped.
Yeah.
A lot of times he would rape them before he killed them, but then he rape them after they're dead. He'd have sex with them after he was a
Right.
necrophile. But I said I can't understand why he would do that. I said if he were alive, that's the one thing why I'd ask him. Well, Keppel's thinking everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that way. But as to one of the things in writing the Bundy case, I did learn that how much someone can get away with, a killer, if he has a really good facade.
Yes.
If he's articulate or handsome or both, or if he's nice, if he seems, and these killers sometimes hide behind that. Now,
Yeah.
we all know of people. I mean, if you know what Otis O'Toole looks like,
Hmm.
and you didn't know who he was, and you saw him walking down the street, you might want to cross to the other side.
Right.
Some of these people are just very dangerous people.
Hmm.
They look like they're half crazed individuals. But when you get to a very smooth serial killer, then it becomes very difficult to recognize this, and that is why and you'll see this in the Bundy case. Somebody that didn't know Bundy is more than likely to believe immediately, once he was arrested. Oh yeah, thank God they got the guy.
Hmm.
But the friends of Bundy, both in Washington State and in Utah, because he was originally captured and unveiled in Utah. No, they didn't think so because they knew Bundy. They knew
Right.
Bundy.
Yep.
Well, they didn't. And of course, it. I remember one fella, friend of Bundy's, told me it said it was over a period of time that we all, in our own way, came to and at different times came to the conclusion that Bundy was indeed the killer of the women of the Northwest and beyond.
Yeah.
But the parents refused to believe it until Bundy told them. And it's hard to believe about somebody that you've lived with. So it's a sliding scale. You don't
Mhm.
know the person. Yeah, good. They called him. Friends of the people. Oh, it can't be because we know him. And then
Mhm.
sometimes the very last to admit these things are the family.
Yeah.
And so it's a terrible thing. So, I mean, I got to, understanding how he operated. Bundy told Bill Hagmaier, the FBI guy that worked with him for the last several years of his life.
Mhm.
Uh, I had two really good phone conversations with Bill. I appreciate the knowledge that he passed off to me. Bill even told me one time, he said, he had people in the FBI said, "Why are you getting so friendly with him?" And and I said, "Are you kidding me, Bill?" They actually did that. He said, "Yeah." I said, "They don't even know you're trying to do that to get him to open up to you."
Right.
That's what it was about. And Bill told me this. Bundy told his mother, Louise, "Bill Hagmar's the best friend I've got." And Mrs. Bundy,
Wow.
in fact, whenever he and Ted's adoptive father, Johnny Bundy, were ever on the East Coast, they would always go and visit Bill. And then, of course, Johnny died at some point. But Bill told me, he said, for years I got a Christmas card from Louise because she appreciated my friendship to her son. And
Wow.
then I haven't heard from her a while. And I said, well, she's been recently put in a um, nursing home. And then, of course, a number of years after that, she died.
Yeah.
I got to speak to, during my
Wow.
research of the Bundy murders, I got to speak to Anne Marie Burr's mother. And there is suspicion based on what Bundy alluded to a criminologist named Ron Holmes that he, in fact, killed the girl, although he always denied it
Mhm.
at other times. So he certainly left himself open to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was a nice lady, but that family suffered greatly. And but anyway, when you're getting into this, it was a very emotional book for me to write.
Mhm.
I wrote this book in 2.5 years, and it was day and night. It was so much that I told my wife I would never do it like this again. But I mean,
Mhm.
I would be spending some time with her for dinner and then going back and working more on it and just day and night. And I finished it one early morning, I think in July, around 5:21 a.m. And that had been a day of working, stopping for dinner with my wife, spending some time with her, and then going back and working till 5 a.m. And that's
Wow.
when I finished the book. So, I mean, it was a real commitment, and to have
Yeah.
that commitment was such an emotional thing. I got to know the victims really well. I found out a lot of other information about the victims that hadn't, for one reason or another, hadn't been published in the other books. So, one of the good things when I got professional reviews of the book, um, they would often, you know, mention that, and
Yeah.
so, and when I got standard reviews just from people, they would they would say that. So it's good. So anyway,
Yeah. I was gonna say that's um one of my things that I noticed really well about your books is they're very victim focused, and you don't
yes,
find that not just with Ted Bundy but with other, true crime or serial killers. Maybe the victims get a paragraph, and that's not a paragraph per victim, but that's just a paragraph in total. And
yeah,
you devoted so much to each person. You really showed us who they were as a person in the life that
yeah,
Bundy took.
uh,
And
yeah.
Kathy
That was
Kleiner,
my intention.
yeah, Kathy Kleiner Rubin, recently put out a book, and I actually saw her this year and met her at CrimeCon. And she
Oh yeah,
mentions in her interviews that you're the author that also brings life to the victims, and no other author does that.
yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. I'm really good friends with Kathy. She's very sweet, and in fact, we got to meet each other for the first time, even though I'd met her through phone calls and emails from a long time ago. But she was invited and I was invited by Catherine Ramsland to Duquesne University, where they wanted me to speak on Ted Bundy and hold a panel with her where people could ask us questions. So we got to
Wow.
meet in person. She's very sweet. We all went out to dinner afterwards, and it was good to, meet her in person. But yeah, and she suffered a lot. You know what she told me on the phone a number of years ago? Not that many years ago.
Mhm.
I mean, she was attacked by Bundy, at Chi Omega,
Mhm.
1978. Well, she has had operations on her jaw periodically since then.
Yeah.
And probably when she told me she had it, basing it, maybe it was 5 years ago, maybe I spoke to her. So she had just recently, she said a couple of years before that, had another operation on her jaw. Can you imagine that? I said, what
Mhm.
do they do when they do that? She says, well, they cut it like near the ear, or, and then they peel the skin down, and then they do whatever they need to do with the jaw. So, I mean, here you got somebody you think when you hear about these horrendous injuries that maybe it's a one or two time fix, but many, many years ago. Not so.
Right.
She
Exactly.
still she still suffers with that, but she has got the greatest personality and
Mhm.
just a really, really nice lady.
Yeah. I got to
I've
see
always
her
liked her.
speak. Yeah. It just her
Huh?
story was like there was not a dry eye in the at
No,
CrimeCon, I assure you.
no, it was something else, isn't it? Isn't
Yeah.
it? She and Kathy Kleiner, and the only thing that saved them from death was because they were on the backside, and when Nita Neary's boyfriend pulled into the parking lot, those lights flashed, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Bundy said, I better take off, and he did. But by the time he came down the steps, he didn't know, but Nita Neary was standing there in the dark
Mhm.
watching him and got a great profile shot. And Bundy's got a really um, noticeable nose, not in a bad way, but a good way. But it's
Right.
very
It's
straight, very
distinct.
straight. It's like a ski nose. But it looks, it's just. But most people wouldn't do that. But if you turn Bundy in profile, that's what it is. So she described his nose exceedingly well. He had a naval pea jacket on, I believe, blue, and he had pulled a cap down, so she couldn't see much but the profile, and so the nose really stood out,
Yeah.
and
So
and
I
it was great.
Yeah, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and I know the comment and question I just had, kind of bringing up CrimeCon, kind of relates to it, but true crime, the interest from the public in the last several years, podcasts, TV shows, it's just so much more talked about than it used to be. I know when I grew up, I mean, I've always been into true crime. I didn't really have people to talk about it with because it just wasn't talked about. But now
Right.
it's just so different. As an
Yes.
author, yeah, how have you seen this shift, and does it impact the work or cases that you choose to write about?
What did you say? Does it
How have
impact the
you found
cases
the
there?
shift in
Oh,
true crime from the public from when you first started your journey writing to now?
oh yeah. Well, one thing is when I first started writing true crime, I just was not aware how many women read it. In my mind, it was, well, probably equal as many women as men.
Mhm.
But I've read studies since then that say that uh, more women read true crime than even men. Now it's a big audience. I get
Yeah.
that, but women are really into true crime. Well, I remember thinking when I learned that, you know, it, it 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 wouldn't hurt to remind women because women reading true crime know, most of it, they read my books, they know it, that these people that you meet out in the world may be what you think they are, but they may not be.
Yes.
And back in the days of Bundy, women in general, I think, learned some things after the Bundy case because the hitchhiking of women back in the 1970s, and I guess part of the 1980s, was a
Mhm.
lot. I saw it all the time, but you don't see that hardly anymore. You just
Right.
don't see it. So women have gotten, and I hate to say this because it's a terrible shame.
Mhm.
Women are targeted more often than men. And if you look at children kidnappings, they'll start with male and female about the same level, and then as the boy gets up to 12 and 13, it starts to drop off. It starts to drop off, and then what keeps rising is the dangers to teenage girls and women and things of that nature. So I remember when I was researching the Bundy case, um, I got sometimes within the files would come lists of missing women in other states where Bundy may have gone to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started checking on other missing women in states. And Bundy's not killing all of these,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a high rate of disappearance. The ratios are always going to be high for women disappearing than men. And
Yeah.
so it's good for women to know that. And you have to be, really knowledgeable of where the dangers could be lurking. And I'm sure women don't want to be seen as a special target, but they are. I
Right.
mean, they just are.
Yeah.
And so they need to be aware of that. So, what I would do whenever I was talking on a podcast like this or being somewhere where I even mentioned it at down in at Duquesne University about I try to see some of this as writing redemptively. That is, get information out there about how these men can fool women, and if they do fool them, it can result in the loss of their lives.
Yeah.
Just be aware of people, and men need to be that way too, so that they don't get suckered. But again, unless it's a special case of um, payback for something or drugs or something, a lot of men die in those kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't involve necessarily abduction and murder, unless you're talking about people like Jeffrey Dahmer or was that guy on the West Coast that used to pick up
Oh, Eileen
Marines.
Warnos.
Oh well, no, I don't even know. She was yeah, she was a serial killer. Yeah, so was that not different?
Yeah.
She was probably made. They say in the FBI, John Douglas says we look for two things: is a serial killer born that way, or is he made? And I remember he made the comment about Edmund Kemper. He
Yeah.
said that in this case, I think Kemper was made one by his mother. And I think the same thing you could say for Eileen Wuornos. She had a lot of things happen to her when she was young. And I
Yeah.
saw a picture of Eileen, Wuornos as a little girl, and she looked so sweet and so normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever happened to her that changed her is a crime in and of itself. And then
Yeah.
she went that other direction, which is horrible. But so again, unless you get for the killing of men, unless you get somebody that is a gay homicide killer, which they usually always target men or boys, then you have that just like with Dahmer. And
Yeah.
I just can't think of that fellow's name in California who used to pick up these Marines and drug them and then murder them. Then you do have some people that will kill men and women, but even in those cases, the women will have a sexual component to it that the
Mm-hmm.
men don't have. They'll kill for robbery or whatever on the other end. So yeah. So anyway, it was just I always want to inform so that people understand what's going on out there. And
Yeah.
thank God there aren't a lot of Ted Bundys out there. And
Mm-hmm.
there's probably not many as smart as he was to get away with it for as long as he was. And thank God we have a lot more going for us now with cameras. If Bundy were alive today, that need to kill in him would still be there, but he wouldn't be. Two things he wouldn't do. He said during his life, he said, everybody I buried has never been found. And so what would he be doing? If he would have sex with them and ejaculate in them, he would not be leaving them on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be burying them. Also, he'd stay away from places where cameras are.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would change how he did it. But if he was the same Ted Bundy, he would still have to fill that need. And of course, women are still disappearing. Even with all these things that better our society, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop disappearing. It just happens in different ways.
Right, right. One of the things that have always struck me about the Ted Bundy case, I mean, that's really, growing up. I was born in 84. He was executed in 89. I've been into true crime.
Yeah.
I just my whole life is, Ted Bundy himself, you need to research to get an understanding of him, but I've always been fascinated more so with the case in regards to society and how
Mhm.
society viewed him then,
Yeah.
especially during his trial, but even still now. I mean, when you were researching the case, I mean, learning all that you have and interviewing as many people as you have, what is your take on when he was at trial and all the women that were there to support him and, saying he can't do this, he's too normal, he's too handsome, he's too all of these positive things that doesn't really mean much.
Those, well, I mean, I look at them like they're crazy. They don't know any, they must be mentally unbalanced. Now, listen, I'll tell you something. I've dealt with women today who have got mad at me. They said, well, look, if I had Bundy, I could change him. I could change him from
Oh,
that. And even if they couldn't change him, some of them said they'd still like to be with him. And I would always say this, well, listen, you do look like the type that he'd want to murder and cut off your head. And it wouldn't phase them. Think
wow,
about that.
that's
So what
wild.
is that? Is that a mental imbalance? I'll leave you to judge. But
Yeah.
I mean, when I remind them of what he did and how heinous his murders were, it just doesn't seem to. Okay, I'm not going to say who this is. I had a woman contact me about a serial killer who is imprisoned out west.
Okay.
And she wants to marry this guy. They have been talking to each other. She's got a long relationship with him. She has told me some of the most horrible demonic things he has told her, excuse me,
Mhm.
about how he killed the women, things like that. I've, I've got this at home. I don't think I'll ever write about it, but this guy still, I got so tired of hearing, I said, you do know he deserved to be put to death, right? I mean, the guy really, really deserves to be underground. You
Mhm.
know that, right? She got mad. She said, you're telling me the same thing that my son is telling me. One day when she contacted me, she said, John Douglas is getting back. He got back with me and he wants to help me in this thing where I said, please work with him.
Mhm.
I don't think she ever did. And then afterwards, when I reiterated about him, look, the guy just doesn't need to be breathing the same air that you and me are breathing.
Yeah.
She cut off all communication. I got to tell you, I wasn't sorry. I'd already gotten a lot of information from her, and it's just the way these people think. Oh, it's just awful. I
Yeah.
mean, some people don't like the calling people like this monsters, and okay, they're not literally monsters, but they are monstrous, and they are monsters in their own right. They seek to destroy people in the most horrible of ways.
Yeah.
So, you know, to me, they are monsters. I'll always consider them that.
Yeah. That's what's funny you say that. That's one thing I always say on my show is to take a step back because people want monsters to look like monsters and they don't. They look
Yeah,
like Ted Bundy. They look
they
like
do.
your neighbor. They look like your coworker.
Yeah,
We want to be able to spot danger and you can't. And I think I don't know if people can't handle that or
right.
I don't know. It's just, yeah, they look like they hold down a full-time job, so they can't be a serial killer. Or with BTK Dennis Rader, he was involved in his church. So there's
And
so many people.
family. Yes,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes. He was a Boy Scout leader or something, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you can't get any more normal.
Yeah.
It seems very normal. Listen to this. I interviewed Larry Alexander, who was one of the Mormon friends of Bundy, and I think that came out. I don't know if it was in Trail. I don't think so. Trail of Ted Bundy, my second book. It might have been the Bundy secrets. Maybe I can't remember so much now. But Larry was offered a lot of money by one of the national tabloids to
Mhm.
tell his story after Bundy was put to death. He turned him down. I contacted him over 20 years later, and I had already interviewed the blonde lady. You know that famous picture
Yep.
of her standing there washing dishes with
Yes.
Bundy, or acting like she's acting like it. And he's holding the rinse gun and he's smiling kind of in a mischievous way.
Yep.
I got to interview her. The guy that took that picture, she later married. And
Mm.
so, but she was a really nice lady. I got all her backstory. Well, she contacted for me Larry Alexander and also John, what's his last name? Not Holman, but anyway, two other guys that worked with Bundy really closely. And Larry Alexander used to go out on double dates with Mormon girls with Bundy. It happened on numerous occasions, apparently. So I asked Larry, I said, Larry, how was he with the girls? He said she was great. Now, one
Mm.
of the things, Bundy never wanted to murder anybody he knew.
Mhm.
So if you got to know Bundy as a female friend or something like that, or a girlfriend, you were probably safe. But because he wanted to kill people he didn't know, because he wanted to depersonalize them.
Yeah.
But I was really great that Larry opened up to me to think about that, and he didn't ask for a penny, and I wouldn't pay a penny. But
Mhm.
he opened up after all these years. I guess the woman, the blonde lady, um, just gave me a good recommendation. That's the one thing I've had. I've always had good favor contacting people. It's the rare bird when they say no. They've always opened up to me. And
Yeah.
so I remember I contacted, this is so funny, I contacted the lead detective in Florida, and and I left him a voicemail, Don Patchen.
Okay.
I had to go through something, and I left him a voicemail because he screens his calls. And a couple of days later, I got a phone call back from his wife, and she said he liked what you said, and he wants to call you back, and I just want to get some information. And I said to her, well, what did I say? I couldn't remember at that point how exactly I said it. I said, I'll have to write that one down, LOL. It was like when I contacted Bob Keppel's wife, and she acted, since I had their home number, she acted that like that wasn't the home. And I said, well, you know what that makes me? She said, what? I said, it makes me fallible because I sure thought, LOL, because I sure thought I wrote the number down correctly. She said, who are you again? And she said, have you written a book before? I said, yes, I have. She said, okay, I'll have my husband call you back. And so she was screening me.
Yeah.
But, humor breaks things up. And some of these guys, they call other people that I've already dealt with, and then they give a good report. So they'll call me back. So
Yeah.
the reason why I mention that, I've heard some of these guys that are out searching for information, they're practically rude to people. And
Ugh.
you're never going to get anywhere like that if you want
Right.
information. So it pays to be nice to people.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on an hour and I want to be respectful of your time. I just had a couple of
Sure.
last minute questions.
Sure. Oh, that's fine. We can go over a little bit.
So, are there any other true crime cases that interest you? Not necessarily that you'd want to write about, but just that you find fascinating?
Well, I found the Kemper thing fascinating.
Yeah, the co-ed shooter.
Um, Edmund Kemper, and I found I thought about I could still do it, but I don't want to do it now. But I thought about writing about Richard Ramirez. Now I did write about him in Through an Unlocked Door. He's got a chapter, but I was going to write a biography of him. But when I read Philip Carlos, it was so extraordinarily good. I thought, no, I'm not going to write a full biography. Carlos is the best I've ever seen on him.
Hmm.
So he's dead now, unfortunately. But Anyway, but yeah, there are a lot of things out there. I think I'm gonna. I guess I can tell this here after I finish this book. I'm going to write. I won't say who I'm writing about, but I'm gonna write a true crime book with famous killers throughout the world and some not so famous. And so I'm
Okay.
going to write about that. From America, maybe Canada, maybe other places, Germany, England, things like that. So
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So some will be well known, others not so well known. So I'll be doing that next as soon as I can get this like World War II book in shape and off to a publisher.
Yeah. When can we expect that World War II book to come out? I know it takes time.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to land a publisher. Um, my my current I have like four different publishers now, but the one that I've been publishing exclusively, True Crime Wild Blue Press. They said, well, it's not really in our wheelhouse. We don't really publish that kind of genre of things. So I said, well, I understand. I was just going to give you the first right of refusal. So after that, I'm contacting somebody else, and I haven't heard back from them yet. I thought I'm just gonna not worry about that, finish the book, and then start putting this out. So once it goes out, and once I get a contract, you're probably looking at anywhere from, depending on the publisher, 6 to 9 months, perhaps even a year, but I'd probably not a full year. But I'll
Okay.
keep everybody informed. Are we friends on Facebook?
I don't think we're no, I know I follow your page, but I don't think we're friends on Facebook.
Well, okay, if you follow my author page, I don't post there a great deal. If you
Okay.
want to send me a friend request on my other, and you'll recognize me because I've got a profile picture, and go ahead and send me a friend request, and then I'll go ahead and then say, oh, by the way, on Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on a Bundy Reels documentary called A Killer Performance. So that's next coming Monday on February 12th.
Oh, nice. Okay. Good to
So I'm letting
know.
you know. Do you get Reels?
I do.
Good. Well, it's a 9 p.m. on Monday at the 12th, and it's a killer performance. Then they have another one on Tuesday, but I'm just in the one. So anyway, and it is about Bundy, and so I just want to let you know that. And but
Nice.
yes, go ahead and send me a friend request, and I will accept. And then you can keep up with anything I'm doing because I just always post it there.
Awesome. Awesome. That would be great. Yeah. So again, where can people, who aren't familiar with your books already, where can they find your books? I mean, I know I've ordered all of mine through Amazon.
Oh yeah, that's a great place to go because they keep playing. Anytime a new book comes out, it's published and it's on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon if you need to bring up the Bundy Murders: A Comprehensive History. The older first edition may pop up or the second edition. Just just click on my name and then you'll see all my books. And so, like I say, that's the one on World War II will show up there down the road, and the one I'm about to write about these serial killers from all different parts of the world, then that'll show up. And yeah, so that's where they can go. And if they want to read any of the true crime blogs I've written, they're
Mhm.
all archived at wildbluepress.com.
Okay.
Wildbluepress.com, and you can bring up my name, Kevin Sullivan, and then you can just search out because they've got everything about me, and they've got most of my books there, especially the ones that they published.
Mhm.
But you can. I've gone back. I remember. I won't tell you what it's about, but it's my own personal true crime story. So you can go there and read it, and it's interesting. But anyway, but that's that or Amazon for my books. I'd say Amazon. If you want to know the latest, always go to my Amazon page.
Perfect. Perfect. So two more questions. One of them is
Okay.
Bundy related. The other one is totally not Bundy related. But while we
Okay.
kind of wrap up Bundy, is there anything about him in your research and what we've talked about today that we didn't touch upon that you want viewers to know or to realize when they're wanting to get into the case and research and learn more about him?
Yes, there is one main thing people need to realize. I get a lot of people contacting me about this very thing that I'm about to tell you. People want to know why he became what he became.
Mm.
And I can say he is a homicidal psychopath, and that is true. He is a homicidal psychopath. I can say that when he was young, he didn't understand who he was. He had issues, and he is to be, our sympathies can go out to him. But when he crossed from being a troubled youth to a predator of young women and young girls, no sympathies there. You got to ask yourself why he did it. It's not just that he started mixing, which he did, sexual thoughts, which are normal for boys and girls when they're growing up. And I can only speak for boys and how we are.
Mm-hmm.
When we're growing up, we start thinking about that and we start fantasizing about that. But we don't ever fantasize it with violence. That's what? Are
Mm-hmm.
you kidding? But he did. But what made Bundy susceptible to that and willing to go that direction, we don't know. But after years and years of fantasizing, he used to love the detective magazines. I'm 69 years old. I just had a birthday on February 2nd, Groundhog's Day. But
Oh, happy belated birthday.
thank you. Just turned 69. So when I was a kid, and Bundy's 10 years older than me, but these detective magazines that no longer exist started in the 1940s and went up through, I guess, the 1980s. I know when I was in the hospital once in 73, a friend of mine brought me a True Detective. There was like 4 or 5 different publishers, but on the cover, they were interesting magazines once you got in and read them. But I was always puzzled by the cover, well, of why they would do this. They always had a woman in fear for her life. She was large breasted. She had a knife or a gun pointed at her, or maybe she had a rope around her neck with a man tightening it behind her. And
Mm.
why they would do that, but he loved it.
Yeah.
So he told Bill Hagmar, that was my kind of porn. He liked porn too. I mean, as little of it as there was back then. I mean, magazines, yes,
Yeah.
but it was the detective magazines that he really related to. And but why did he want to go that way? This is as they say, $64,000 question.
Yeah.
We don't know. And here's something else. They can take killers and they can see the changing patterns within their brain through color coding of when they're thinking certain thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
They can know chemically what happens in the brain, but nobody, and I believe this, nobody is ever going to be able to say definitively why these people go that route.
Yeah.
Bundy didn't, he wasn't beaten. Now, maybe Kemper was made through his mother, but even then, you know how many people come out of horrible, oppressive homes and they don't go down that road?
Right.
Something caused them to flip. But in Bundy's case, he had nothing oppressing him like that. He even said, my parents were good to me. He had a good
Mm-hmm.
relationship with his siblings. So, what causes him? I don't think we're ever going to know. In fact, I finished the second edition of the Bundy murders that, the French have a term, je ne sais quoi, which means I don't know or I don't know what.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, we can tell you exactly what Bundy did,
Mm-hmm.
but don't ask us why.
Yeah.
Don't ask people why he did it. Even experts, either if the psychologists or writers who have written about him, nobody's going to ever figure out why. That is the thing we will never know. What
Yeah.
makes somebody that way?
Yeah.
Because most boys, they just want to think about women having sex with them. They don't want to add violence to that. Who would want to? Hence my question to Keppel. I can see him wanting to have sex with them, but why would he want to slaughter them?
Hmm.
Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That is very well said. It's the one thing people want to know, and we'll never know. We'll never know.
No, no, I don't believe we will. Anybody that says they do know, they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't figure it
People are
out.
complex, so you can't wind things down to a simple answer from a complex situation.
Yeah, there's been other killers that said, listen, if you let me, I don't want to, but if you let me out, I'll kill again.
Yeah.
These are people I've written about. I will kill again. I will do it again.
Hmm.
Why will they do it again? They said they shouldn't do it again. They don't want to do it again, but they will. Well, what's causing that? You got the guy saying, I don't really want to do it, but I'm going to. I don't think you can figure that out.
Yeah.
Changes in the brain that you see on a computer won't tell you that. They'll
Yeah.
only tell you what's going on. They won't tell you why.
Oh man, yeah. One of the other authors, excuse me, that I had interviewed, Nicholas Schreck, he knew Richard Ramirez, and we talked about, his relationship with Richard and, the trial, and Richard had his own, female flock there. We all saw that. But
Sure,
in
sure.
that interview, one of the things that Nicholas had said was Richard had made the comment. It was pretty much, that, we're friendly, we get along, but outside of this situation, if we were in the, out in the streets, would I murder you or would I attack you? And he couldn't say he wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, like spot on to what you said.
Well, as I said, I'm a Christian, and apparently Tex Watson, the main murderer of the Manson family, is a Christian,
Yeah.
as was Susan Adkins, who's passed away. But if Tex gets out tomorrow, he can't come and stay at my house. He's not going to do it. Not going to do it.
Oh man, Kevin, one of the things that I don't think you know. So I'm a co-host over on a channel called the Paulcast, and we have the Manson Saga discussion panel. And we've been doing that for about 3 years now. We started during
Wow.
COVID, and we really researched that case. And yes, I
Yeah.
don't talk about it on Danny After Dark because it's so well done over there. And we went to
Yeah.
LA
Yeah. Yeah.
and we got to go to all the sites, and but yeah,
So
what you're
this is
saying about
this
text,
is all the Manson case, right?
we only do the Manson case.
Oh,
Yep.
it's an interesting case.
Yes.
Um, I I've had a couple good conversations with Steve Kays, and Steve Kays was Kays. Is it K or Kays? I can't
It's
remember now.
K. Yeah.
Okay, okay. He worked with Bugliosi. He was like one of his prosecutors or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then Kay did the Bittaker and Norris case
Hmm.
himself. So I
Yep.
called him one day and we got to talking about Bittaker and Norris, and we talked a little bit about the Manson thing too. But he said that the cops coming in there, he's laughed with them. He said, uh, the cops would come in there and he said, the cops are real professional. They do their duty, but they look at people like Bittaker and Norris. And he said they'd probably like to just go up there and shoot them in the head or take them in an airplane out over the Pacific Ocean and drop them out. But he said they're professionals; they won't do that. But the Bittaker and Norris case was so incredibly horrendous. It really
Yeah.
it it affected Kay's. But anyway, I was going to write about Bittaker and Norris, but I changed my mind, and then soon after that, I went with Ted Bundy. But
Hmm.
which I'm glad I did. But and that would occupy the next 2.5 years of my life. But he's a really nice fella. And there's a book out that Kays is in, and it's called Something with the Devil, and it has a really good chapter on the Bittaker and Norris case. But there was and it's by the psychiatrist or the psychologist. I think he's a psychiatrist who dealt with both Bittaker and Norris. And I told Case, I can't get that guy to call me back. And he said, "Are you kidding? He's not calling you back?" I said, "No, he's not calling me back." And he said, "Well, we'll try him again." And I did. and he never called me back. But anyway, some people will, some people won't. So what?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Well, I'm glad you did the Manson stuff. That's a fascinating case,
Yeah, that
horrendous case, but
didn't
still
expect to
fascinating.
do it for 3 years, and it's just there's so much to it. So,
Yeah.
all right, so this was a not planned question because I didn't know that this would go this way, but so Leslie Van
Okay.
Houten just recently got released. What is your thoughts on that?
Now, who got released?
Leslie Van Houten, she was one of the killers, or to
Oh,
kind of
I
for the
did not know.
LaBiancas.
Yeah, I did not know that. When did that happen?
Oh gosh, that happened a few months ago.
Was it for medical reasons?
No, she was
Well,
deemed suitable for parole, and she got released.
I think she's probably sorry. I mean, all these people destroyed their lives.
Hmm.
I don't think she'll do anything to anybody. I think she'll go live the rest of her life out quietly. What is she like?
We have
70?
not heard a peep since she's been released.
No, I don't think you will. I don't think she'll give any interviews. I guess she's got family members.
Mhm.
Was she ever one to get married in prison with a husband waiting on her?
Did she? Oh man, I'm blanking now. I knew she was with somebody who was also another inmate, and then they
Okay.
split up. But I don't think she's married. I don't know.
Okay. Did she take, I can't remember, did she take place in the actual stabbings or murders?
She was only there the night of the La Bianca killing, so the second night, not the Sharon Tate house, but the La Biancas on the second night.
While she was there, did she participate in the actual murder?
She says she only stabbed the victims once they were dead, but that's
Okay.
up for debate.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody corroborated that. And now she's been in prison for 60, 50 something years. Um,
Mhm.
maybe that's why they let her out. See, I don't think Watson will ever be released.
I
And
agree. I agree.
yeah, and I think he knows that, but I guess he'll keep trying. I don't think Watson would do anything with any. I don't. But who knows? I don't
Right?
think so. But I kind of got a feeling that this other lady will probably live quiet and you won't hear a peep out of her.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that Newsom went on board with that. You
It
know?
went through a lot of appeals that this has been a long time coming, but it kind of
Yeah.
opens the door for others. It really
Yeah.
does.
Well. Yeah. Well. I mean, how many Manson people are still in prison?
Let's see, Patricia, Tex, Bobby, Leslie. So not that many compared to a lot of the family, or quote unquote the family who's out. There's more out than there's in.
Right. Whatever happened to that? Never mind. I was thinking she was. I think she was a part of it, and then she supposedly tried to kill Gerald Ford. Was she a part of the Manson crew?
Lynette Fromme.
Huh?
Lynette Stinky Fromme.
Oh yeah. Whatever happened to her?
She served quite a bit of time for trying to assassinate the president, but she was released, and so she
Yep.
is out now. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
pretty
Well.
quiet. Can't a lot of. I mean, when you try to assassinate a president, there's a lot of
Yep.
restrictions on you.
Oh
So
yeah. I would think
yeah,
so. I was surprised they let Hinckley out, but they
right.
did. They did.
Yeah.
Well, so it goes.
So it
Now,
goes.
now you can't even get killers in prison. Those
Oh
guys who kicked the heads of the cops in New York and gave the finger to everybody as they left, they're gone.
yeah.
They need to place Bragg in New York with somebody who's going to do the job. These cities who have allowed this stuff, oh my
Hmm.
God, they're just encouraging crime. So what are you
Yeah.
going to do? You got to have tough laws. Stick with
Yeah.
them.
Oh man, that's a whole conversation in itself. But
Isn't it though?
yeah. So
Yeah.
again, so winding things down, and this, I just have to, this is very not true crime related, but my audience is very pet friendly, very huge advocates for animals as well. And they all
Yeah.
know, I'm a big cat person. I have six, and I
Yeah. Oh,
volunteer at my
that's great.
local shelter. And in
Yeah.
messaging with you, you messaged that you like cats as well. So I have to
Oh,
ask Kevin, do you have any pets that you want to mention? Or
yeah. I have had a lot of dogs, and my wife, she was allergic to cats for years,
Oh,
and but I had a little cat show up one night, and you could tell this was about 7 years ago, and it wasn't a stray. I mean, we would feed the strays on our property. They'd come and they'd eat and they drink water, and uh, we were just good to the neighborhood cats.
yeah.
This one showed up. It wanted to come in the house, so we brought her in, sat down on my lap in the chair, and I said, "Well, we discovered his front nails had been cut, and that
Mhm.
I thought, well, maybe he's lost. Maybe he's got a chip. No chip. What we think happened is somebody, maybe an older person, had this cat and died, and then could be that the family members just let it off with the strays in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And once it saw me, it wanted to come in. So he lived with us for 6 years, and then he passed away. He was
Oh.
diagnosed with lymphoma 4 years after we got him, which would have made him about 9. But then we put him on prednisone,
Mhm.
and boy, he lived 2 more years, which was great. Surprised the vet. In any event, he's not here. But what a sweet so I love cats. I've had a bunch of dogs. My wife and I have a dog now. We love the dog. We love pets. We love
Mhm.
animals. We're just big animal lovers. I give to monthly to the Beagle Freedom Project. You know, so many beagles are um, taken and used in labs. You know,
Yeah.
they're bred for laboratory stuff, and they're very sweet dogs. And so I donate various organizations. We have a thing in Louisville called Alley Cats Advocates, and I
Mhm.
donate to them, and they get the stray cats in, and they give them any medical help they need, and they also will, if they're not pregnant, they'll also take the females and spay them, or they'll take the males. I
Mhm.
mean, they'll do they'll do the stuff to the
Yeah, neuter. Yeah, spay and neuter. Yeah.
neuter. Yeah. They'll do all that stuff. So anyway, we're just big animal people. They're just, I heard a thing not more than about a year ago. They said, man, it was a study. People love their pets more than they do, so, they'd rather be with their pets more than they want to be with people. I can kind of believe that, can you?
I agree, and I'm right there.
Yeah, and you're right there. Yeah, thank God I work out of my home. I get to be with my dog all day, and my wife now works out of the home. And even though she'll be retiring next year,
Nice.
she's in one area of the house, I'm in another area of the house and working, and the dog just runs between the both of us and shares time, and then she'll come in and watch TV, and we'll watch TV during the night, and the dog just goes from one chair to the other, one chair to the
Oh,
other. So yeah, it's a great
that's
thing.
awesome.
I love cats. I'd like to get another cat too. Oh, my wife, when this cat came in, she said I'm not allergic to it, so she's not
Oh,
opposed to getting another cat, but she just, like, when we go on trips, we usually take the dog, but taking a cat would
yeah,
not do
little
it. It's different. It's different, but I do want to get another cat because I love them.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool kind of the community that, to start this platform because I'm into true crime and to meet other
Yep.
people who are and then meet other people who, are not just from the United States, but in other
Right.
countries and they're into animal rescue too. And, they'll
Sure.
send me a DM and be like, I just adopted this cat or I just adopted this dog and I wanted to share it with you. And it just,
Isn't that
that's
great?
I'm
Don't
so
you love
involved
it?
in animal rescue. It means
Yeah.
it means the world.
Well, yeah, and a number of our dogs were rescues. Yeah, the last beagle I got was a rescue. The beagle before that was a rescue. And so, yeah, so this dog we have now, it went to a no-kill animal shelter, but that's where we got it. So it's
Yeah.
a rescue, and so yeah, it's important, and
Yeah.
yeah, it says a lot about. I believe it says a lot about people. Uh, how you treat your animals says a lot of. If you love animals, you
Mhm.
got a good heart. If you don't really like animals, it's like there's a coldness there that shouldn't be there. So
Mhm.
I
I
don't know.
agree. I agree. I
I don't
assure
like hunting. I'm not a vegetarian. I will eat meat and
Mhm.
eggs. Okay, I'm not, but cows and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
But no, I don't hunt. Some people hunt because they love to, and I don't. I just, if you're going to eat the meat, that's fine. But
Yeah.
I'd rather not take part in that.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
All
So,
right. Well, thank you, Kevin Sullivan, for joining me on Danny After Dark. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's been absolutely wonderful talking about you and your research and everything that you've done, not just with research on Ted Bundy, but so many other cases that
yeah.
you've covered. And I look forward to your upcoming books. I
Well,
really do.
thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you for purchasing my books. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been really wonderful talking to you. And hey, don't forget to send me a friend request, and I'll accept it. Okay.
Will do. But you'll be
All right.
warned, every week I post pictures of the available cats and kittens where I do my
Well,
volunteer work. So be prepared
well,
for that to flood your
good,
feed.
good. What state are you in?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Oh, great, great. Well, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. So yes, we got our shelters here, and oh, I tell my wife sometimes maybe we should go in and maybe peruse and maybe get one more. And so who knows? I'm
I
open to
support
the
that.
idea.
I
All
support
right.
that.
Yeah. Well, good talking to you.
Good
All right.
talking, Kevin. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
Thank you. All right. Bye bye.